Nick, I wonder if we can set the stage a little bit, set the scene. What are we seeing in terms of demand for artwork here in Asia? Who's buying?
Actually, at this moment, globally, Asian art buyers are really powering the market. So whether it's in luxury or global fine art, there's about 36% of our turnover globally is Asian buyers. And you'll see them active, obviously, in the areas where they expect to be, Asian art, luxury, impressionism, contemporary art. But even at the very top end, in, let's say, old master paintings, you'll have top transactions. I mean, when it was about a year ago, we sold a very important Botticelli for about 80-some million, and the underbidder was from mainland China. And so you'll see them active throughout the whole spectrum what we offer. In luxury, of course, they really weigh quite a lot, 40-some%. And in cutting-edge contemporary art, Asian buyers today are really sort of buying voraciously. So over 50% of our bidding comes in the now sell. The now sell is a sale of contemporary art presenting really cutting edge, is powered by Asian buyers.
Oh, that's really interesting. I mean, obviously, the last couple of years have been quite traumatic, right, for all of us. I mean, we obviously throughout the pandemic. I mean, we all felt the economic impact of the global pandemic, and China's market was hit especially in terms of the economy there. What did we see in terms of the slowdown's impact on art collecting there in China and the rebound that we're seeing now?
Well, during the pandemic, actually, if you look at 2021 and 2022, these were our record years for Sothebys here in Asia. So it's really sort of bucked the trend, particularly with the strength of contemporary and modern art and luxury. And now taking the backseat of the pandemic, we had Chinese art, because Chinese art really sort of relies on all areas that are very connoisseurship driven, where you need sort of first-hand inspection. For example, with paintings or porcelain, where you've got issues of condition, quality, sometimes debates around authenticity. People want to engage with that material. So in those areas, it was very hard to tease sellers into consigning their best property. But what we saw last month, which was our all-important sort of 5th-year anniversary for Sothebys Asia, what we saw was a return of Chinese art buyers and a return of Chinese art. And in fact, it was a sort of 9-year record for all the traditional categories. It was quite extraordinary. And the top 2 prizes this season, we had on the one hand, a painting by Zhang Natian, which is a beautiful gold screen splashed with lotuses, painted in 1973, the very year when we came to Asia. So it was an important sort of symbolically, this piece sold for about $30-some million US. So close to a record, not quite a record for the artist, but one of the top prices. The second highest price, again, a month ago, was for Chinese art. This time, imperial porcelain bowl that dated back to the 18th century. That was bought for over $25 million by a mainland Chinese client. We saw, I think, 3 times as many Chinese buyers as we saw in the last 3 years active in our sales. So that really spoke to the strength of the rebound of the Chinese art market.
Yeah. Is that robust?
That's very robust. That was over $200 million in sales of Chinese art. That's as good as anything.
That's great. I mean, obviously, the demographics of who's collecting in this region has also changed, right? I mean, Asia is home to the second largest art market after the US. Tell us a little bit more about that shift in terms of who we are seeing, who's buying, where are they from? A lot of millennials,
right.
Chinese, but otherwise.
Right. I mean, around the region is quite balanced. We have buyers active from all across the region. Obviously, in terms of numbers, most of the pieces we're selling together today are actually flowing back to China, whether it's in the field of luxury, Asian art. For contemporary art, actually, it's quite balanced around the region. Taiwan, I mean, it's not sort of, it doesn't fit the narrative that people like to follow, but Taiwan continues to be extremely solid. We have very sophisticated buyers in Taiwan that have been active for decades and that are still sort of powering the market in the region. Koreans have been very strong. You've had, of course, with the Fez Free Soul opening up last year, more and more interest and you know, the market being very vibrant in Korea. Southeast Asia is very strong. Singapore, we've had our first sale last year in 15 years in Singapore to try and bring back the art, you know, locally and making a sort of slightly tailored sale for Southeast Asian buyers with a sort of 70% composition of Southeast Asian art. That is also to capture what is happening in Singapore with, you know, the great sort of migration of wealth there. And also as an outpost to develop the Vietnamese market. We've done quite a lot in Vietnam as well, because in the last, let's say, 4 or 5 years, Vietnamese buyers have been an incredible new power in the scene.
That's
buying, of course, their own heritage,
yes,
Vietnamese artists, but also expanding to Asian modern contemporary art, Chinese art, and many other areas.
A lot of new aspirational wealth there in Vietnam.
Absolutely, yeah.
And also just the demographics here in Asia of who's buying is very different. That's shifted quite a bit as well, right?
It's shifted a lot, and I think with the pandemic and our sort of refocus on digital tools, I mean, innovation and technology has always been, you know, at the forefront of what Sothebys has been doing. And actually, at the turn when the pandemic hit, we were already ready, and we shifted immediately into a sort of a hybrid model, which is online sales, but with a sort of physical. You have an auctioneer, multi-screens, and sort of brought the excitement of the physical auction to the screen.
Yeah, and that's I imagine that's also bringing in a different kind of buyer, younger.
Yeah, brought in a totally new demographic. People can sort of, we had millions, every time we have an evening sale, a marquee sale, you have millions of viewers across all our platforms. And that also, during the pandemic, we also moved into more online sales at different price points. And we saw, now actually this last year, we had 91% of our bids came online. So people are really used to and enjoying the online platform bidding, you know, from the comfort of their homes. And you know, what we expect usually is the engagement to be at the lower end on our online platforms. But actually we had 2 years ago a bid for the Francis Bacon triptych coming online at $70-some million US. So that was extraordinary.
Someone in their slippers bidding, let me just put $7 million there.
Came from, actually, was Justin Sun, which is a sort of crypto tycoon, I think, you know, many of you will be familiar with.
Fantastic.
So, yeah, you see millennials have been very strong. 30% of our buyers today are millennials. And this is a trend we'll continue to see.
That's great.
Even Gen Z, actually, now in our contemporary day sales, are an important force.
That's fantastic. We're going to bring up a photo of a Chinese cup there. This is the so-called chicken cup.
Right.
Yeah, tell us more about the chicken cup.
Right. So actually, the picture on the right really made the rounds of the newspapers about 9 years ago. And when we sold this cup is a cup that dates back to the Ming Dynasty, the third quarter of the 15th century, one of the most fabled objects in the history of Chinese art, and certainly the most copied. If you go to China, there are tens of thousands, possibly more, fakes of it. And so when we offered it, and actually this is just a little bit of a glimpse into the world of Chinese collectors. The person you see on the screen is Liu Yiqian, who is with his wife. They're heading the Long Museum in Shanghai. They're among the most sort of forward-thinking, the greatest force among collectors in China. They've composed one of the greatest collections, harking back to early Chinese art, early Chinese bronzes, all the way to all the sort of the fine imperial arts of the Ming and Qing dynasty, to revolutionary paintings. They have the greatest collection of revolutionary paintings, to you know, Modigliani's, Richter's, and cutting edge, you know, feminist contemporary art. So the whole gamut.
And of course, the story behind him is he was a former taxi driver.
He was a former taxi driver.
Became a tech, or became a stock trader, who now, of course, is one of the biggest art collectors in the world.
One of the greatest art collectors in the world, has bid on some of the most famous paintings. And here, he came to buy this, you know, there's a great sense of patriotism in a way our Chinese collectors have been buying over the last 20-some years buying back, great cultural artifacts. And so when he came to pay for it, that piece made about 38 million US dollars. He came with his Amex card, so swiping it back and forth. And after paying for it, he said, hey, can I see it? So took it to space, he took it out, he examined it in the palm of his hand, enjoyed it, and immediately said, hey, can I drink from it? He said, hey, you can do whatever you want. You just, he just bought it, poured him a cup of tea, and drank from it. And so the picture circulated on the social platforms,
totally
and newspapers went around the world. And of course, people are prejudiced against some of the Chinese wealthy buyers. And of course, there were some negative comments talking about how can someone do something so outrageous?
Because they thought it was so...
Yeah, they thought it was so low. How can you, drink from it? But what's interesting, actually, the first time we got this piece on consignment was in 1999. At the time, it came from a great Japanese collector called Goro Sakamoto. And when we picked it up, everyone was invited, for this very solemn moment to drink sake from this cup. And so when I tell people about this moment, everyone thinks there's such elevated, beautiful moment. In fact, it's very much the same action, drinking from this cup. But, I think it's very unfair bias against it.
Do you think there's kind of a little bit of a double standard when it comes to Chinese art collectors and maybe...
To some extent. Now people actually, I have to say, people enjoy all this sort of, the very direct and passionate way of collecting.
Yeah. Now, obviously, the chicken cup here was a record sale at that time. Where are we now in terms of sales? I mean, obviously, post-pandemic and everything. What are we seeing in terms of the sweet spot as well as kind of the high end there?
Right. Actually, in the last 2021 and 2022 have been record years for Sothebys in Asia. No one's ever surpassed the totals we made, which was over 1.1 billion, 1.1 something US dollars last year and the year before. Now we're on track with our spring season 2023 to follow up on that. So these have been very, very strong years. Obviously, year to year, you see the balance between the departments and the totals shifting a little bit. But I would think that the performance, we've managed somehow to sustain it.
Yeah. Are we seeing kind of a softening at the very high end?
Actually, the very high end, we have certain prices. Now, of course, for some of our Chinese buyers, it's not so easy to move funds across borders. So you've seen maybe at the very top end, slight softening, but there's a sweet spot between 500,000 US and 5 million US, where the market is extremely deep and where we make many transactions. From 10 million US and above, it's, firstly, it's not always easy to find great fresh material. And yeah, there's a bit of a softening, but the totals remain extremely strong.
It's interesting. Now, obviously, our taxi driver turned billionaire there. I mean, he's a great example of this new type of eclectic collector, right? Who really bucks the trends, the conventions of traditional collecting. And as we were talking before, you're saying we're seeing more and more of these so-called eclectic collectors.
Yeah. Yes, I think cross-category buying is one of the great trends of the market these days. I think if you look at buys throughout the 20th century, and of course you've always had cross-category buys. I mean, in Asia, pioneers include people like Joseph Lau, who was collecting as a 20-some-year-old. In the 80s, Chinese art, and very quickly expanded into other areas, Impressionist modern art. Pierre Chen in Taiwan, who was at the forefront and still is at the forefront buying contemporary art, but started with modern art, Chinese art, and sort of had an extremely, extraordinary vision for his collecting. But most collectors, it's true, throughout the 20th century, have really focused on narrow areas, you could say quite geeky areas in collecting, and stuck to it their entire lives. Blue and white porcelain, coins, just even certain artists in modern art. And now you see a widening of the interest. I think people's with social media, etc., people's attention span is sort of, lowering, and people like to be stimulated with, all sorts of
lots of different
new areas. Exactly.
That's great. So tell us more about this photo. You see it?
Right. Oh, actually, so this is a cell we had 10 years ago in 2014, 9 years ago, and which really sort of captured or announced the zeitgeist we're still in, which is a convergence between art, fashion, music, and all these worlds. People nowadays, I think, like to enter a portal like this, which offers multiple sort of facets into, contemporary living. And so this cell, which was the cell of Nigo's collection. Nigo is the founder of Bathing Ape. He's a sort of, fashion kind of guru.
Hip-hop DJ, all-around cool guy.
Yeah, Pharrell Williams' best friend, has sort of really trained him, who's now taken on LV, and he's now at Kenzo. And so this collection which mixed in fashion, jewelry, luxury, art. I mean, you'll see the cause here is the first time most people actually were ever exposed to it, and really that, cause really took off. That was 2014, thanks to this collection. You had all these elements that made for an extraordinary cocktail that really brought in a record number of new clients. And these are the sort of experiences and the direction of the market today, which is really mixing it in. And when you mix things in, what's extraordinary is it's impossible to predict who the next buyer will be. And in this case here, we just juxtapose this picture of Robert Chang, who is the person who bought that Jacob & Co. dollar necklace. I mean, when we had this piece in the cell, we thought, and we saw Jay-Z and other people from other friends of Nigo posting it, and we thought it was going to end up with some rap star somewhere. But actually, it was a 86-year-old collector of Chinese art. Yeah, with a taste for bling, for sure. He's been,
very hip. Very hip 86-year-old.
I've seen pictures. He's been wearing sunglasses since he's 12 years old. So there is, this is the beauty of the auction world, is the unpredictability, is that the mysterious ways that objects and people converge, right? And people take that adventure with an object.
And you're probably seeing that more and more with hybrid. I mean, with the auction going online, right? Is that anybody from anywhere? Yes,
exactly. Everyone's exposed to everything that we sell, and of course, the way we position things through curated sales. Of course, on the back of this sale, we've done multiple collaborations with other personalities, often from the world of music. We've done. My colleague Yuki Terase used to run the contemporary department, did 2 other collaborations, one with Top, the South Korean music artist, another one with Jay Chow a couple of years ago, which were incredibly successful. People just get to experience these objects in different ways, right? You have the same thing, but if you combine it in different ways, it actually really becomes something else.
Yeah.
The combination of items you put together will cut windows in each other, and you'll see them differently.
Really stretches kind of our perceptions of what is art.
Exactly.
Collectability.
Yeah.
We've got some really good examples of that too, which I think speaks to the young eclectic collector. Can we bring up the next photos of the curiosities? There we go.
Right.
What in the world are we looking at?
So this is another model of sales we introduced 10 years ago, which we ran all the way until the pandemic. We stopped because these items are hard to source locally, impossible to source locally. These were sales of that presented themselves as a contemporary cabinet of curiosities with objects of natural history, old master drawings, African sculpture, Roman art, Egyptian art, contemporary art, mixing it all in. It was a way to introduce our clients here in Asia to all sorts of new areas, and testing the market and seeing what people respond to. Also, taking objects out of their context is makes the experience of them much lighter, right?
Yeah.
What we've done before is, for example, when we try and introduce people to old master paintings, you'll have, you'll bring a whole exhibition to Asia, hang a number of paintings, 20 paintings, and you have Western colleagues standing there with the attaché cases. It's kind of feels quite threatening for a lot of buyers. Now here you take them out of their context, it allows a very easy experience, purely aesthetic, and yeah.
Where you don't have to be like a serious buyer who really understands this or really knows the academics behind it. Or
you can take the journey first and really actually do the work afterwards. So this is one of the directions of the market, and certainly something that we'll continue doing in this part of the world. Because actually in Asia, right, the market is sophisticated to some extent, but if you want to buy, Asian art from the ancient past till today, you'll find many sort of, access points. If you want to buy modern contemporary art from Asia or elsewhere, you'll find many places to buy it. International galleries, art fairs, auction houses. If you want to buy something outside these areas, there's nowhere to go. If you're interested in old master paintings, French furniture, African art, even 20th century design. So there's a lot of room to educate and expose our clients, and Sothebys sees itself as a gateway for that.
That's great. We have about 4 minutes left, 5 minutes left. We'd love to take any questions you have, so please type them in there using the QR code. Actually, here we've got one now. How much art investing is by PE funds? What type of art, and what are their investment objectives and strategies? Is that something you can talk about?
Actually, yeah, we do have certain funds buying in our sales. You have investment funds, and often actually they spread their interest across areas, right? So they won't be confined to necessarily digital art, modern or contemporary. They might sort of spread their assets across areas.
Are we seeing more and more purchases by private equity funds?
I mean, you'll see sort of, investment funds coming in when the market is particularly frothy. So, for example, in 2010 and 11, you had so many investment funds. That's the only thing people are talking about, investment funds in art, right? And at this moment, they're still active, but it's not the main trend. They're not. Most of our buyers are still private collectors. For the most part.
I mean, art traditionally has tracked with how the global economy is doing. Are you feeling that this is where we are now? Is there really strong correlation? I mean, obviously you've got a upcoming sale, and how are we?
At this moment, I feel if you look at our sales, our April sales that just closed a month ago, actually, where the auction market is still very resilient and very, very strong. It'll be interesting, actually, in a couple of weeks, we have our New York sales, in our May sales, which are real bellwether for the art market in general, where all the greatest contemporary and modern international art is being sold. So market observers will be tracking those results very closely.
Great. We've got another question here. How are NFTs and digital innovations disrupting the art industry?
I mean, when NFTs really stormed into the market 2 years ago, it was an incredible opportunity for us to really engage with artists and curators. And but obviously in the last year and a half, there's been a slight correction to the market. Now we have our platform, our Sothebys Metaverse platform that we've launched last year, which will be trading both primary and secondary art markets of digital collectibles. Actually, we're ready for the market when it picks up again. If that's anything to go by, actually, the Art Basel last month, actually, the top transaction was an NFT. It was a sculpture by Beeple, and that's, I think it sold for about 7 or 8 million US. So that's a clear marker that they're coming back into the marketplace.
It's interesting. I mean, when you talk about NFTs, you know, online and all of these, it all really speaks to making art just a little bit more, you know, less threatening to people, and in some ways making it a little bit more accessible to.
It's very accessible, and for people, particularly in the contemporary art fair, it even makes it more tradable. It's so easy, frictionless. You know, you don't have to store it. You can trade it anytime. It was, you know, people moved into that space very quickly, and from all areas of business. Actually, one of our very best friends is a collector of Italian Renaissance drawings, and within a shot sort of moved on into the NFT space. So anyone can be your next NFT buyer. It's extremely sort of, you know, easy to keep and trade.
Great. Can we show the last photo there? This, yep. This
right. So this will be our headquarters. I mean, actually our showroom from next year in the nexus of Central. So this will be
right smack on the street, storefront.
Street
Anybody
level,
can walk in.
One of the greatest facades in Hong Kong, and it's a very exciting move for us. It'll be the biggest change we've seen in Asia for Sotheby's since we came here 50 years ago. So we'll bring art and luxury to the doorstep of our buyers, make it more accessible, make it exciting, and you'll come in, you know, you'll come into this space where you'll be exposed to art from prehistory to the present. It'll be incredible.
And will prices be something that I can actually pull out my credit card without maxing it?
Actually, people have you know, preconceived ideas about our entry points. Actually, if you look at our online sales, there's a lot of, you know, relatively affordable material starting from 5,000 US and above, the whole range, and we'll be, you know, offering that all year round through our new Buy Now channel in Cheetah House.